I worked 2 jobs to fund my sister's life, but she called me a loser. I cut her off, and she spiraled. Now, she's stuck while I moved on. When my younger sister, Lauren, was accepted to her chosen college, the entire family celebrated as if it were the greatest success of all time. My parents were beaming with delight, and Lauren was already discussing her future career plans. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, quietly calculating how everything was going to turn out. My parents did not have enough money to pay for her schooling. They made this evident when they began dropping hints during family chats. "Lauren is so smart, but college is so expensive these days," my mother would add, as if I didn't realize where this was headed. I did not have much. I was working as a mechanic and saving money for a house, but Lauren was my sister. I wondered, what's the harm in helping? So I pitched in. It began with simple purchases, textbooks and groceries, but it quickly escalated. I soon began paying her rent, electricity, and even nights out when she wanted to unwind. She always had an explanation when she asked for money. "I'll pay you back when I graduate." Or, "Mom and Dad just can't help right now." What made matters worse was that my parents treated me as if I was required to assist. "Family takes care of family," they'd say, as if I wasn't already straining my back working 2 jobs to support them. Lauren, meanwhile, pretended that the world revolved around her. She'd share images of expensive dinners and weekend getaways, beaming as if she wasn't living on my dime. I kept telling myself it was only temporary. I felt it would all be worthwhile after she graduated. But, deep down, I was beginning to resent the idea that my life was on wait while hers was racing full speed ahead, and I was footing the price. I believed things would improve once Lauren got into her college schedule. I imagined she'd recognize how much I was doing for her and express her gratitude. However, her entitlement only increased. Her spending habits were the first clear clue. While I was skipping meals and working late nights to pay her rent, Lauren was displaying her new clothing on social media, designer purses, trendy shoes, and elegant dinners that I could never buy for myself. At first, I attempted to rationalize. Perhaps she has a part-time job. Perhaps she was simply overdoing it for looks. But when I approached her about it, she simply shrugged it off. "Everyone at school dresses like that," she told me. "I don't want to look like I don't fit in." It wasn't just her attitude toward money, it was everything. She treated me like a walking ATM, never asking how I was or if I any assistance. My folks were not any better. Every time I tried to express how much I was struggling, they'd guilt me into being silent. "She's your sister," my mother would explain. "She's building a future. You should be proud to help her." But it wasn't just helping, it was sacrificing. My weekends were gone, as were my money, and that house I had always wanted. Forget it. Meanwhile, Lauren couldn't be bothered to write a thank you card. Instead, she contacted to complain about her teachers, her homework, or her flatmates. She never inquired how I managed to work 2 jobs simply to keep her afloat. The resentment I'd suppressed began to rise. I was weary of being treated as if my life didn't matter as long as hers was progressing. The tipping point came when Lauren casually stated that she was considering studying abroad for a semester. She didn't even question if I could afford it. She simply assumed I could handle it. "I think it would be such a great experience," she added over the phone, her voice light and carefree. "The program costs a little more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right?" I sat there, grasping the phone and trying to understand what she had just said. I could barely cover her usual expenditures, and now she wants me to pay for a semester abroad? When I brought it up with my parents, expecting they would finally see sense, they doubled down. "This is an incredible opportunity," my mother stated. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I was floored. No one acknowledged how hard I worked. There is no care for my welfare, just the expectation that I would continue to sacrifice. Because, obviously, that was my position in the family. At the same time, Lauren's actions became impossible to ignore. She'd phone to whine about the most minor things, like how her roommate had borrowed her shoes or how the campus cafeteria didn't have real lattes. She also started making subtle barbs at me. She'd laugh at how I was always working and say I was married to my job. "She doesn't appreciate you," a coworker said one night while I was complaining during a break. "You bend over backward, and she acts like you owe her." For the first time, I began to question whether they were correct. Family dinner was intended to be an informal gathering. My parents invited me over to catch up, and Lauren had returned to town for a break from school. I didn't want to go, but I believed I could handle a few hours. When I arrived, the situation was already tight. My parents were hovering over Lauren, inquiring about her classes, social life, and whether she needed anything else for school. I sat silently, hoping for someone to ask how I was doing. But, of course, that never occurred. Lauren brought up the study abroad opportunity again at dinner. She raved about how great it would be and how everyone she knew was doing it. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I hope you're ready for a little extra work, big brother. These programs don't come cheap." I froze. I could not believe she had the nerve to say it in front of everyone as if it were a done thing. "Maybe you should get a part-time job," I suggested, attempting to keep my tone light. Lauren laughed. "Me? A part-time job? That's funny. I'm too busy with school." That was it. The final straw. I set down my fork and glanced at her. "You're joking, right? You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle forever while you sit around doing nothing?" The room went silent. My folks looked at me as if I'd swore at the dinner table. Lauren's jaw dropped, but she soon recovered. "What's your problem?" she demanded. "You've always been so bitter? Just because your life isn't going anywhere doesn't mean you have to take it out on me." That hit me like a punch to the belly. After everything I had done for her, sacrificing my time, money, and goals, was this how she saw me? A failure? Her words hung in the air like a smack to the face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I was not going to give her the last word. "Bitter?" I asked, leaning forward. "You think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere?" "Lauren, my life isn't going anywhere because I was too busy funding yours." My parents quickly sprang to her defense. "That's inappropriate," my mother responded, her tone stern. "You're her brother. It's your job to support her." "My job?" I repeated with a sour laugh. When did it become my job to work 2 jobs so she could live in luxury? When did it become my job to sacrifice my entire future so she could have hers handed to her on a silver platter? Lauren crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Oh, there it is," she mumbled. "The martyr routine." That was it. I was finished. "You know what?" I asked, rising up. "Go ahead and call me a failure, Lauren. But at least I worked for everything I have. What have you done? Nothing. You sit around spending my money while pretending you're better than me." I turned to my parents. "And you two are no better. You've enabled her selfishness at every turn, and I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore, not her rent, not her tuition, nothing." The silence was terrible. Lauren's face turned pale, and for the first time, she appeared genuinely shocked. "You can't do this?" she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "How am I supposed to live?" "Figure it out," I remarked as I grabbed my jacket. "I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time for you to learn." I left the dinner feeling angry and relieved. For the first time, I stood up for myself. But I knew the consequences were coming. It didn't take very long. The next morning, my phone was inundated with texts and calls. Lauren came first. She began sending passive-aggressive messages. "Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about leaving your own sister out to dry." When I did not answer, the guilt trip started. "You're really going to leave me like this? After all I've been through?" I disregarded all messages. If she wanted to play the victim, she could do so without me. Then my parents became involved. My mother called first, her voice oozing with displeasure. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she told me. "Lauren needs your help. She's your sister." "She's been my financial responsibility for years," I replied. "It's time for her to grow up and take care of herself." My father wasn't much better. He called later in the day. "You're being selfish? You're punishing her for no reason. What's she going to do now?" "Get a job," I stated bluntly. "Like the rest of us." The true kicker came later that week, when I received a call from Lauren's landlord. Apparently, she had informed him that I was the one who paid her rent. When the payment did not go through, he came directly to me. "She's not my problem anymore," I informed him. "You need to talk to her." Lauren must have taken that chat as a wake-up call, since a few days later she showed up unannounced at my flat. She appeared unkempt and scared, a far cry from the confident, entitled lady I was accustomed to seeing. "You can't just cut me off," she exclaimed as I opened the door. "Yes, I can," I answered, leaning against the doorframe. Lauren stood there, moving her feet like a child caught in a lie. She was not used to hearing no from me or anyone else. "You don't understand," she said, her voice increasing in desperation. "If you don't help me, I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't just move back home. Mom and Dad don't have room for me." "Not my problem," I replied firmly. Her jaw fell. "Not your problem. You're my brother. And for years I've been more than that," I said, stepping forward. "I've been your safety net, your bank, your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream, and the one time I asked for respect, you called me a failure. So no, Lauren, it's not my problem anymore. She blinked, as if unable to comprehend what she was hearing. I didn't mean it like that, she mumbled. I was upset, and I just wasn't thinking. You never think, I said back. You never think of anyone but yourself. You used me. You used Mom and Dad. And now you're panicking because you finally have to face the consequences. Then she started crying. Big theatrical sobs may have worked on someone else. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind, I told you. You need to figure this out for yourself. Get a job. Budget your money. Do whatever it takes, but leave me out of it. She didn't like the answer. You're being cruel, she said, wiping away tears. You're supposed to help the family. That's what family does. No, I replied, my voice firm. Family supports each other. They don't take advantage of each other and call it love. And until you figure that out, don't bother coming back here. I shut the door, interrupting whatever apology she was about to give. For the first time, I felt like I had power over my life. After closing the door on Lauren, I braced myself for the consequences. She was not the sort to suffer in silence, and I knew she'd attempt to make this into a sob story for our parents. They called me the next day, enraged. Mom began with her typical guilt trip. How could you do this to your sister? She insisted. She's struggling, and you left her when she needed you the most. I did not hold back. Struggling? I scoffed. She's been living off my paycheck for years while acting like she's the queen of the world. Maybe it's time she learned what struggling actually looks like. Dad spoke up next, accusing me of being callous and ungrateful for everything they had done for me. This part had me laughing. Ungrateful? I asked. You're kidding, right? I've been funding Lauren's lifestyle while you two sat back and cheered her on like she was the next big thing. Meanwhile, I've been working my ass off just to keep her comfortable. The more I laid it out, the more relaxed they were. By the end of the call, they had nothing to say but that I was tearing the family apart. Lauren's reaction was stunning. She bombarded her social media with vague remarks about how some people only care about themselves, and the agony of being let down by those closest to you. She even had the guts to set up a GoFundMe page for her rent, claiming she was blindsided by an unexpected expense. Her buddies expressed phony concern, wondering if there was anything they could do to help. However, donations came in very slowly. Apparently, people weren't as enthusiastic about her lifestyle as she had planned. Meanwhile, word of the drama circulated rapidly throughout the family. My aunt called to report that she had heard I was being unreasonable. However, as I described the circumstances, she rapidly changed her tune. She really expected you to keep paying her rent? She questioned, shocked. Welcome to my world, I responded. After my parents arrived at my door, I realized how far this scenario had progressed. Lauren's entitlement was no longer the only issue. The entire family was enabling her, treating her problems as if they were mine to fix. They did not stop with guilt. My mother began to disseminate the story that I had failed Lauren and the family. Suddenly, cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started responding with messages like, "It's not fair to let her struggle," or "Family comes first." Lauren's mask of control, however, began to erode with time. I found out from common friends that she had moved back in with my parents after getting evicted. Of course, that wasn't sufficient for her. She made it apparent that she expected to be coddled there as well. One acquaintance informed me that she had overheard Lauren moaning about the food at home. "She's mad that her parents don't cook her real meals," my friend added, chuckling. "She even joked that they should hire someone to take care of her, since you're not around to do it anymore." Hearing this only strengthened my determination to terminate ties. If my family wanted to encourage her behavior, it was their decision. But I wasn't going to keep exhausting myself for someone who couldn't even express fundamental gratitude. Lauren's downward spiral continued. She moved back home with my parents, who treated her like a helpless kid. They catered to her every desire, spending what little funds they had left to support her lifestyle. Meanwhile, they continued to blame me for her condition, as if I had committed some awful crime by cutting her off. I learned from family that Lauren was still spreading lies about me, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her during a tough period. She cleverly left out the bit where she had been leeching off me for years, flaunting her status as if it were her birthright. Her demise, however, was not just financial, but also social. Word of her GoFundMe fraud spread, and the same people who used to accompany her for lavish dinners now avoid her calls. Without me picking up the tab, she had nothing to give them. My parents called me in a panic, and that was the turning moment. Lauren apparently ran up credit card debt in their name, exceeding the limit to fund a shopping spree. They begged me for help, stating they couldn't make the payments on their own. I couldn't help laughing. After defending, aiding, And vilifying me, they had the arrogance to crawl back. "This is your mess to clean up," I informed them forcefully. "You chose to support her. You chose to ignore her behavior. And now, you're dealing with the consequences." For once, they did not dispute. Perhaps they recognized that I wasn't going to swoop in and save her like I had done so many times before. That was the last I heard from both of them. I moved on with my life, focused on my future instead of being weighed down by their incessant turmoil. It took years to mend the harm they had caused, but I emerged stronger for it. Lauren, the last I heard, was still living with my parents, trapped in the same loop of entitlement and excuses. Part of me felt terrible for them, bound by their selfishness. But mostly, I was relieved. They'd made their bed. Now they could lie in it. My mother commanded me to conceal my hard-earned medical degree, asserting that any revelation would shatter her real daughter. As the digital clock on my desk flicked to 10:30 p.m., a gentle ping from my laptop cut through the stillness of my room, heralding the arrival of an email that promised to change my life. My heart leapt. With shaky hands I clicked open the message from the medical school's administration. The words, "Congratulations, you have passed your final exams," blazed across the screen. I sat back, a surge of relief washing over me. After years of relentless studying, sacrifices and sleepless nights, I had finally done it. I was now a medical doctor. I couldn't contain my excitement. I wanted to shout from the rooftops, share the news with the world. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a testament to the support and sacrifices of my family. Well, at least part of my family. My thoughts immediately went to my father, a gentle and supportive man who had always believed in my dreams, even when they seemed impossibly out of reach. He had been my rock, always there with a word of encouragement or a late-night snack during marathon study sessions. Yet there was a complexity in my joy, a shadow that lingered at the edge of my happiness. My mother. She was a woman of strong emotions and stronger loyalties, but oddly, they were not always directed towards me. Her sister's daughter, my cousin Lara, seemed to hold a more significant place in her heart. Lara, almost 30 and still grappling with medical school, had faced numerous setbacks, from a physical disability due to an ACL tear to a battle with depression that seemed to ebb and flow like a capricious storm. My mother often said Lara was like the daughter she never had, a statement that stung every time I heard it, though I never let it show. I understood compassion, but it pained me that my own milestones seemed overshadowed by Lara's struggles. Tonight, my mother's usual warmth was tinged with caution. Her smile strained as if she were bracing herself to guard a fragile peace. In our small living room, under the dim glow of the overhead lamp, the family dynamics were a tapestry of silent battles and unspoken agreements. My mother's phone lay next to her, likely on silent, a bridge to Lara who was just a call away, always needing emotional support or advice. The gentle hum of my laptop seemed to echo the racing of my own heart as I reread the congratulatory message. I had passed all my final exams. The realization came not as a single moment of joy, but as a cascade of relief, pride, and an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. My journey through medical school had been anything but easy, punctuated by long nights, rigorous study schedules, and the perpetual pressure to succeed. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to bask in the glow of my success. The room around me, usually cramped and cluttered with textbooks and notes, felt suddenly expansive, as if it were breathing in celebration with me. I imagined my future, my career as a doctor unfolding before me, a path I had dreamed of since childhood. My reverie was interrupted by footsteps. My father, entering the room. His face broke into a wide, genuine smile when he saw the expression on my face. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked, his voice a mix of pride and certainty. "Yes, Dad. I passed." The words felt surreal even as they tumbled out. He swept me into a hug, the kind that said everything words couldn't. "I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you," he murmured. We shared a moment of pure happiness, a father and his daughter, united in a milestone that felt as much his as it was mine. However, the completeness of the moment was short-lived. The sound of my mother's footsteps approached, slower, more hesitant. As she stood in the doorway, her smile was constrained, her congratulations muted. "That's wonderful, dear," she said, her voice strained, as if each word were weighed down by 1,000 others unspoken. I watched her closely, sensing her turmoil. It was clear that my news, though expected, had stirred a deeper, more complex reaction. The air shifted as she sat down, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "You know, Lara was studying tonight too," she began, her voice a careful neutral. "She's been finding it really hard lately, what with her condition and all." Lara, my cousin, had been a perennial undergraduate. Her medical school journey stretched over almost a decade marked by medical leaves and personal challenges. Her physical ailment, an ACL tear from an old skiing accident, was often cited by my mother as a cruel setback, despite Lara's ability to move relatively well. More debilitating than her physical injury, however, was her depression. It clung to her, a visible shadow that seemed resistant to the various treatments she sporadically pursued. She stopped taking her antidepressants again, my mother continued, her tone laced with worry. She believes her depression is purely biological, not triggered by anything specific. I nodded, my initial surge of excitement dampening under the weight of family complexities. I understood the gravity of mental health issues. Medical school had only deepened my comprehension. Yet I couldn't help but feel a twinge of frustration at the constant centering of Lara's struggles over my own achievements. The room fell silent, the unspoken words building like a wall between my mother and me. She looked away, her voice barely a whisper when she finally spoke. I'm asking you to not make a big deal out of your graduation just yet. At least not publicly. My heart sank. What do you mean, Mom? Just consider how Lara will feel, she said, her eyes pleading. Imagine how it would be for her to see her younger cousin succeed where she's still struggling. It might push her deeper into her depression. The request hung heavily between us, a stark imposition on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. My father, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke, his voice firm. She should be proud and able to celebrate her hard work. It's not fair to ask her to hide her success. But it's not just about fairness, it's about kindness, my mother countered, her voice rising slightly with emotion. I felt torn. My professional understanding of depression and its complexities battled with a deeply personal sense of injustice. My achievement, hard-earned and long-awaited, was being overshadowed by a cousin's chronic struggles. Later that night, after my father had calmed down and my mother had retreated to her room, presumably to call Lara, I received a text from her. I know you must be proud, but just think how Lara must feel. You've always been like sisters. I'm not asking much, just don't post this on social media. You can tell your dad's side of the family, but let's not mention it to mine. The message left me numb. There were no words of congratulations, no expressions of pride, just a reminder of my supposed duty to cushion my own life to spare someone else's feelings. I stared at my phone, the screen a cold light in the dimness of my room, and wondered about the cost of my success. Was my joy really such a threat to Lara's well-being? Was I being selfish, or was I simply caught in an impossible situation where my achievements needed to be muted for the sake of family harmony? As I lay in bed that night, the complexity of my emotions kept me awake. Joy, resentment, guilt, and a profound sadness swirled within me. I had reached a pivotal moment in my life, yet I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath my feet. How could something so rightfully celebratory become a source of such deep familial conflict? My father, usually a man of joviality and patience, had lines of strain etched across his face. The divide between my parents, once barely noticeable, had widened into a chasm filled with unspoken grievances and stifled conversations. They were polite, but the warmth was missing. The disagreement over how to handle my graduation news had unearthed deeper issues, ones rooted in long-standing differences in how they viewed family obligations and personal achievements. One evening, as I was returning home from a walk meant to clear my own crowded thoughts, I overheard my father on the phone. He was speaking to his sister, my aunt, his voice a mix of frustration and resolve. Yes, she did it, graduated top of her class, he said, the pride unmistakable even through his annoyance. No, we haven't told everyone yet. It's complicated, you know, with her cousin still struggling. I paused at the door, the impact of his words sinking in. He was defending me, defending my right to celebrate openly. Yet he was also trying to navigate my mother's wishes, trying not to widen the gap in their relationship. As the weekend approached, the atmosphere in our house grew tenser. My father, buoyed by his mother's enthusiasm to throw a celebration, became a whirlwind of activity, his energy a stark contrast to the quiet brooding that had settled over my mother. Despite the strained silences that punctuated our days, he moved forward with the plans, his voice often carrying through the house as he spoke on the phone, arranging details with a kind of defiant cheerfulness. On Saturday morning, the air was crisp and clear, a perfect backdrop for the festivities. My paternal grandmother, a sprightly woman with an infectious laugh, arrived early, her arms laden with food and decorations. She swept through our home like a benevolent storm, her presence filling the space with light and warmth. Today we celebrate, she declared, her voice leaving no room for argument. Her determination was palpable and it buoyed my spirits. As I helped her string lights across our backyard, I felt a tug of guilt. My mother had chosen to spend the day away, visiting her sister, perhaps to avoid the celebration. Her absence was a palpable void, Yet the excitement and joy from my father's side of the family were infectious, and I found myself caught up in the preparations, laughter spilling from me more freely than it had in weeks. Friends and relatives began to arrive by mid-afternoon, their faces bright with smiles and congratulations. Each hug, each congratulatory handshake, felt like an affirmation of my hard work and achievements. My father, seeing me surrounded by our guests, gave me a thumbs up from across the lawn, his smile wide and proud. I returned the gesture, feeling a surge of gratitude for his unwavering support. The party unfolded like a scene from a joyous family film. There was music and dancing, children running around with plates piled high with food, and my grandmother regaling a captive audience with stories of her own youth. Amid the festivities, I was a constellation of conflicting emotions, elated by the celebration, yet shadowed by the knowledge of my mother's disapproval. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the faces of my family, my father called for quiet, and the chatter subsided. He stood by the makeshift dance floor, a glass of wine in his hand, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. "Today, we celebrate not just a graduation, but the journey it took to get here," he began, his voice steady and clear. "My daughter has shown resilience, dedication, and a passion for healing that makes us all incredibly proud." The applause that followed was thunderous, the pride in his words mirrored in the faces of everyone around us. I blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the love and support, a stark reminder of what this day should have been about from the start. Later, as the guests began to depart, leaving behind a trail of well wishes and laughter, my grandmother pulled me aside. "You did well, my dear. And your father is right to celebrate you," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Don't let anyone dim your shine, not even family. You've earned every bit of this happiness." Her words, simple yet profound, stayed with me as I helped clean up after the party. The night air was cool and refreshing, a gentle balm to the heat of the day and the intensity of emotions experienced. I felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just for my academic achievements, but for navigating the delicate balance of family loyalties and personal joy. However, the true test of the evening came when I decided to post a picture from the party on my Instagram story. I had carefully blocked all my maternal relatives from seeing my posts, an attempt to respect my mother's wishes while still sharing my joy with my friends and the rest of the world. The photo was simple. A picture of me and my dad, both of us smiling, with the caption, "Celebrating a journey of perseverance and love." New doctor in the house. The aftermath of the graduation party felt like waking from a dream into a nightmare. The echoes of laughter and celebration had barely faded when reality reasserted itself with a vengeance. The instigator was an innocuous Instagram post, a photo of me and my dad smiling at the party, captioned with simple, heartfelt words. I had taken precautions, blocking all my maternal relatives to adhere to my mother's wishes. But in my vigilance I had overlooked one detail. My aunt's business account. The fallout was swift and merciless. My aunt, unaware of the delicate dynamics at play, shared the post in our family group chat, her message full of pride and congratulations. It wasn't long before my phone began to buzz incessantly with notifications. Relatives who had been kept in the dark expressed their surprise and joy, but the undercurrent of confusion was palpable. Then came the direct message from my aunt, her tone a mixture of concern and confusion. "Are you guys okay? Why did you block me?" she asked. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The truth felt like a betrayal not just to my mother but to an unspoken family code that dictated we keep our internal conflicts private. Yet amid the emotional turmoil, honesty seemed like the only path left to me. "I was asked not to share the news widely," I typed back, the words feeling inadequate as they appeared on the screen. "Mom was worried it might hurt my cousin's feelings." The response was immediate and incendiary. My aunt's anger wasn't directed at me but at the broader implications of what my mother had asked of me. She reached out to my maternal grandmother, and what had been a controlled flame quickly turned into a wildfire. The family group chat, usually a place for casual updates and shared memories, became a battleground of opinions and accusations. My phone, once a portal to friends and celebration, now felt like a grenade with the pin pulled out. Text after text rolled in, each vibration a reminder of the escalating conflict. The worst were the messages from my mother. Her words were sharp, each one laden with disappointment and anger. "How could you be so selfish?" one read. "You've embarrassed me and your cousin." I could almost hear her voice, the mixture of hurt and fury, as if I had personally attacked her. I couldn't bring myself to type out those messages again, even mentally. Each word seemed to burn into my memory, a litany of pain and misunderstanding. My mother's reaction hurt deeply, not just because of her harsh words but because they underscored a chasm in our relationship that I had only just begun to recognize. My father, upon seeing the distress I was in, took a more proactive role. He tried to shield me from the brunt of the family's displeasure, intercepting phone calls and attempting to explain my side to anyone who would listen. His support was a lifeline, but it couldn't completely shield me from the reality of the situation. Days passed, and the initial storm of reactions began to settle into a cold war of silence and sidelong glances. My mother moved out temporarily to stay with her sister, saying she needed space to think. I remained at home, the atmosphere thick with unsaid words and unresolved tensions. The house felt larger, emptier, as if my mother's presence had filled more space than I had realized. During this time, I reflected a lot on family, on loyalty, and on the cost of personal achievements. I questioned whether my success was worth the upheaval it had caused. Was I selfish for wanting to celebrate my hard work? Was I insensitive for not fully grasping the impact of my actions on my cousin's mental health? As these thoughts marinated, my paternal grandmother, ever the matriarch, reached out to me with words of encouragement. "You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm," she said during one of our many phone calls. Her words were a balm, helping to soothe the sting of guilt and confusion. The next few days were a blur of familial discord. My mother, feeling betrayed by my actions and cornered by her siblings' criticisms, left to stay at her sister's house, seeking solace among those who might understand her perspective better. My father and I were left to navigate the fallout. Our home a quieter, somber place. I pondered over everything that had transpired, replaying conversations, gestures, and silent meals. Was I insensitive? Was celebrating my hard-earned success really an act of cruelty towards my cousin? The questions haunted me, each one a sharp jab to my conscience. In the midst of this, my paternal grandmother's words came back to me, a gentle reminder in the storm. Don't let anyone dim your shine, not even family. It was a simple mantra, but in it, I found the strength to stand by my achievements, even if it meant weathering the storm of family conflict a little longer. As the days turned into weeks, I hoped for reconciliation, for a return to the old normal, or perhaps the establishment of a new understanding. I wanted my mother to see that my success was not a weapon against my cousin's challenges but a milestone worth celebrating openly. The road to healing seemed long and uncertain, but I was ready to face it, fortified by the support of those who believed in me and by my own newfound conviction in the validity of my achievements. What do you think about the story? Please leave your comments below. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the entire story.